Hey, there you
Oh my God. Are we live?
We are live. So yes, Councillor Lukes has just joined the room, and we're taking a look at the participants. It looks like we have quite a few attendees. This is great. We have 25. This is what I see on the list over here, and hopefully everybody could hear us loud and clear. Um, if just so you know, you have the opportunity. I think you have a chat function. You have an ability to put up your hand function. You won't be able to speak as of right now if you're attending right now. But you can ask questions, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I'll give a brief overview of how that can work in a moment. But as you can see, we have an agenda up here, and we have Councillor Lukes, who has just joined us, and I'll let her kind of take it away, and we'll start up some of the introductions after.
Okay, thank you very much. I apologize. I'm a couple minutes late. I was on a very active Zoom meeting with 63 residents about a traffic issue on Hosted Road. So I apologize. These Zoom meetings now are the thing, I guess, and we just go from one meeting to the next. Anyways, I'm following up on a commitment that I made to the community when we were having many discussions about 30 University Crescent when it was constructed. So that's the purpose of this meeting tonight. And I also wanted to provide a quick update, which I have here in front of me, and I'll be looking at it off another screen, about the updates on University Crescent, the reconstruction and rehabilitation of University Crescent. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a $9.9 million reconstruction of University Crescent that is in the works, and that the department has told me today they believe will be starting in 2022. They've just hired the consultant. They're looking at rebuilding University Crescent, which means ripping it out right down to the gravel and I'm not sure if they're concreting it or asphalting it, but it will be a big project. Clearly, you won't be locked into your homes. There will be access and egress. But what I will be doing going forward is keeping the neighborhood in the loop. I'll be working with the Public Works Department to keep the neighborhood in the loop on what's happening. We know that there's active transportation that's going to be put into it. They're going to try and realign a bit of Pembina Highway with the gas station and the U-turns. And as many of us know, there's much confusion at that intersection. So this is, I think this is great news, $9.9 million coming to the neighborhood, rehabilitating and fixing up the road, and also the active transportation component. So I have all of your emails. I think everyone who signed up. I will also email you this update out that the Public Works Department has provided for me. And if you have questions or anything, feel free to ask. And the rest of this evening's presentation will be basically conducted by the Public Service, by City Winnipeg Planner Robert Kostiak. I think that many of you are aware of the University of Manitoba activities, and that they are proceeding with development on their Southwood lands, primarily the first phase down by Sifton Road. From the sounds of things, it'll be my kids' lifetime that they ever get up to Thatcher Road. But I just wanted to deliver, now that we have an idea what's going on at the University of Manitoba, I wanted to deliver this information to you because I know residents were asking, and I wanted to follow through on the commitment that I made. So I think Robert's going to talk to us about a question and chat option and all of that. And I'm here all evening to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you. And as Councillor Lukes mentioned, I'm Robert Kostiak. I'm a senior planner with the City of Winnipeg Urban Planning Division. I want to note, though, although I'll be presenting, I am joined by a team. There is Valdine Lawson, who is a principal planner with us, and James Platt, who is also a senior planner with us. So they'll be in the background throughout the night. So we have, as we mentioned, about the question kind of options that are out there. That if there's a question that comes up, perhaps if you get a response while I'm speaking, I'm going to try to go through the presentation kind of cleanly, and then we'll have question and answer after. But if there's questions that come up, you do have a function that you could type it in, and maybe some of those questions could be answered in the meantime as we're going along. What I'll be presenting on is, as Councillor Lukes had mentioned, we have a motion to investigate the potential for a secondary plan or a planned development overlay in the Agassiz and Montcalm area, our neighborhoods. So with that, we wanted to review some of the planning framework and review what secondary plans and PDOs are, or PDOs being a planned development overlay. We're going to review how proposed complete communities direction strategy 2.0 influences development in the focus area. And don't worry, we will be talking about what complete communities is in the coming slides, so I'll get into that. We'll provide some commentary on development opportunities and constraints in the focus area, being the area that we're asked to take a look into, and provide commentary on the need for a secondary plan or a PDO. And then we'll have time for some question and answer. So I've timed out my presentation. I'm hoping that it's going to be about 30 to 40 minutes in that range. But like I said, we want to leave a lot of time open for a question period. And when the time comes, we can open it up. If somebody wants to speak live at the appropriate time, we can take a look and maybe request in the question box that you would like to speak live, and we could unmute you so you could go ahead and ask your question. But otherwise, you could just type it in and we could do our best and go through the list as we go along. What you might want to do right now, and maybe we could do this as just a quick test, just to see how your system's going. If you want to just type in a letter or something like that into a question box, just for a practice round, we're of course not going to answer, we'll dismiss all these questions, but just to make sure everything's up and running and okay and everybody's in a good spot. Give that a whirl. We could take a look at what comes up. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a question, just put in a letter, make sure that we can see it, and we can go from there. So we're seeing some hellos and tests coming up, so that's great to see. We can see everything that you're typing, so this is good news. So perfect, great, thanks everyone. It looks like this is up and going, and everybody could hear me, I hope. And let's get ready. All right, so jumping right in. We'll take a look at the planning framework that we talked about. So here what you see is a planning or a pyramid, kind of a hierarchy of planning in our planning framework for as it would apply to us in the city of Winnipeg. And at the top, you see the legislation. What we're guided by, and basically for those who know how the jurisdictional kind of balances work, we're only beasts of the province. So whatever legislation allows the municipality to do is all we can do. And what we're guided by is the City of Winnipeg Charter Act. And that's where all of our planning and development related regulations are enabled, are basically through that act. And underneath that, we would have regulations such as provincial planning regulations that the city would also have to follow. Below that, we are required by the City of Winnipeg Charter. Here, I'm just going to get a little pointer up in one moment. By the City of Winnipeg Charter, we're to do a development plan or a master plan for the entire city. And our plan right now is called our Winnipeg. We have the ability to, oh, I lost my button, just one moment. We have the ability to also do secondary plans, which could be for smaller areas within the city, or it could be for larger areas like the entire city, such as the Complete Communities Direction Strategy. I'll go into what a secondary plan is in the coming slides, and I'll also review what our Winnipeg is in the coming slides. We are required by legislation to have zoning bylaw. In fact, we actually have two in the City of Winnipeg. The City of Winnipeg zoning bylaw pertains to or regulates development in Agassiz and Montcalm. And there is also a downtown zoning bylaw. Other elements of the building and planning framework that could fall under here are the variances in conditional use orders, development agreements, or building and development permits. But that's basically the hierarchy, and it's all started with the City of Winnipeg Charter Act is what kind of enables most of what we can do here. as I had mentioned, we would have a slide on our Winnipeg, which is our development plan. Our Winnipeg took effect in 2011, but we are currently in the process of updating that plan, being the draft, our Winnipeg 2445 development plan. Now, per the charter, council must adopt a development plan that sets out the following: the city's long-term plans and policies respecting its purposes, its physical, social, environmental, and economic objectives, and sustainable land use and development, measures for implementing the plan, and such other matters as the minister or council considers necessary or advisable. So that's direct wording that comes out of the charter and what we need to do to enact a development plan. One way that the city of Winnipeg advances the sustainable development goals of our Winnipeg is by ensuring that desired outcomes are fully implemented and achieved through Winnipeg's physical development. And kind of a urban structure that has been created is the Complete Communities Direction Strategy, which is Winnipeg's primary land use planning document. And it's guided by the policies in our Winnipeg and outlines how and where Winnipeg should grow. So we have currently we have Complete Communities Direction Strategy, but along with our Winnipeg, we are in the process of updating that. So as an urban structure, various areas of the city are delineated into different kind of policy areas that allow for different kind of goals and objectives to achieve different desired outcomes. So for example, we have places that would be more transformative in area, in nature, sorry. And one example that's quite easy to point to would be downtown. This is an area that we would expect our higher density uses in terms of residential development, the taller buildings, the more intense office uses, all those types of things we would expect in a downtown, whereas we may not expect it in some of what we call the established neighborhoods. And there's two that we point to, and they're a little hard perhaps to pick off on your screen, depending on how large your screen is, but it's a kind of a lighter yellow or a brighter yellow in here, which is called the mature communities areas. These areas are basically delineated by, this is where most of the building patterns would have had lanes or something along those lines, and development that would have been pre-1945 or so. And then recent communities, which is what applies to Agassiz and Montcalm, right up and about here, which is a little bit more of a pale kind of yellow as well. And that's another established area. So we will expect growth and change in all of our neighborhoods, but maybe not to the same degree as we would in say, what we call the transformative areas, such as the downtown. So in established neighborhoods, we probably aren't going to or expect this level of change so much in these areas. So as we're gathered here, it's primarily on the basis of the motion that Councillor Lukes had pointed out, and this was brought forward to the committee that we report to as planning staff, which is the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development, Heritage and Downtown Development, where we were asked to undertake a planning study for the Agassiz and Montcalm neighborhoods to investigate the potential creation of a secondary plan or plan development overlay to the Winnipeg Public Service for consideration. So we took a look at that. I put in a few of the supporting statements. There was a lot that supported the idea of this notion, and what I wanted to just highlight was that they were generally focused on that University Crescent, which kind of helped how we shaped the way we looked at the nature of the request. So jumping back a little bit, so we gave you that hierarchy, that planning hierarchy with the legislation, the City of Winnipeg Charter Act at the top. What exactly is a secondary plan? Again, it's enabled. We're able to do it because the City of Winnipeg Charter allows us to. It's approved by council via a bylaw, which includes a public hearing. So to create a secondary plan, you would have to have a public hearing, and with that, there's a process for advertising and a process that plays out in front of typically a community committee hearing body to make a recommendation forward to council, and council would ultimately have to approve a secondary plan. All development proposals and other undertakings within a secondary plan area must be consistent with that secondary plan. I just want to make a little note about that though. secondary plans are often they're feature oriented. It's really when it's looking at a change to the use in the lands, or a significant change that goes outside of your existing rights, that that plan would apply, is most often the case. If you were to apply and there's a secondary plan in your area, and you needed a deck or something along those lines, it's very unlikely a secondary plan is going to affect anything having to do with that. It typically directs how an area of land is developed and used, as I was kind of just mentioning. It'll contain a vision, land use concepts, policy statements, and a strategy for realizing the vision. It manages change by directing how land in an area may be used, where buildings of various types, sizes, and shapes may be located, and how infrastructure can be extended. It can provide clear direction to the public and to the development industry, and it could vary by scale and level of detail. So we've already given an example of a secondary plan. It covers the entire city. It's the complete community's direction strategy that we showed a slide or two ago. However, it doesn't have to apply to the entire city. It could apply to a segment of the city. It could apply to a neighborhood. There's no set limit on the area that it could cover. And just as another note, public engagement is very often a part of the planning process in creating a secondary plan. So some examples, of course, as we have already mentioned, there's the North Campus lands to the south that recently had a secondary plan adopted for it, and Waverly West B. As you can see, that both of these plans are, they have different kind of policy delineations through them. They have, in the case of the North Campus lands, the higher intensity uses are kind of pushed towards the purple area, where the taller and more dense buildings may go, per se, and then it kind of goes into a lower scale kind of development as you go north, to be more compatible with the lands on the south side of Thatcher Drive. In Waverly West B, we have examples of where we'd see a community node in purple here, where you might find a school and a rec center. And then you have some medium density residential areas, so that might be your 4 or 5 story apartments or something along those lines. That has like other areas with a low density, where you'd find more of your single family homes, or maybe even townhouses and duplex and stuff like that, or that type of development, I should say. Also, you'll see your kind of major road patterns will often be laid out in secondary plan, especially if it takes on an area that's a little bit larger, like Waverly West B. So these that are highlighted in black will be the collector roads, or the ones that will take on a little bit more traffic and most often can support a bus route. So that's some examples of what a secondary plan can look like. What is a plan development overlay? Now, plan development overlays identify areas of land to which special rules or development standards are to be applied to the underlying zoning district. So all lands in the city of Winnipeg are zoned, as we're required to have a zoning bylaw. So within each zone, there'll be different specifications of what types of uses can be used, and also kind of the bulk and mass and height that the buildings that are built upon those lands can be developed to. However, a plan development overlay can modify those base rules that might fall under that base zoning. And it's often done in some unique circumstances in order to achieve kind of a local planning objective or something like that in a specially designated area. Now, it may be appropriate when additional zoning controls are required to address an area-wide condition, or to implement an area-wide plan for a proposed district as well. And the development of PDOs is often supported by a background study and public consultation as well. Sometimes they've been used in conjunction with the secondary plan. So again, it can kind of basically tweak the underlying zoning rules to again achieve a desired outcome is often how it's used as an example. I provide 2 examples, and I'm very sorry that these are as black and white as they are. They're straight out of our zoning bylaw. But I just want to highlight kind of 2 things about them. On the one hand, on the left over here, you see the this is the St. Norbert plan development overlay. The St. Norbert Plan Development Overlay doesn't hide, it does, although it will regulate some uses, it actually has more of a kind of a design focus. And this is, I want to kind of contrast that versus say the Academy Road one, for example. So with it, through the process that was undertaken for the St. Norbert area, there was a desire for what was described as Franco-Manitoban architecture to kind of be more prevailing in the development that occurs. So what you'll find in the St. Norbert Plan Development Overlay is some different standards that are modifying or are requesting, I should say, for future development to adhere to certain design standards built into the features of the buildings. Whereas over on Academy Road, the concern was where commercial development kind of began and ended. So what you'll see is it's pretty simplified in that it's got area 1, 1A, and 2, 2 being the living area. And I'm sorry again that this doesn't come out all that well depending on the size of your screen. But basically the living area will not allow for commercial development. So again, this kind of delineates where the commercial part could be acceptable and where it could end. So that's two different examples. And like I said, I'm overly simplifying them, but just trying to highlight the point of how this could work. So this would be overlying the underlying zoning. So all these little lots that you see or lines that you see in between are lots, and they would have zoning allocated to them, be it for commercial purposes or residential purposes or anything along those lines. So with all that is just general background information, again, we were asked to take a look at the area that what we're taking a look at here and calling the focus area. Again, we're asked to look at developing or the potential to develop a PDO or a secondary plan in the Montcalm and Agassiz neighborhoods. Now, technically, if you look at this thick black border, that is the outline of the Montcalm neighborhood, which extends quite a way south down Pembina to the southern extent of the Southwood lands, and same with Agassiz as well, up to Bishop Grandin. Now, with the focus of the motion being on University Crescent, we narrowed down what we're calling the focus area. The hatched or the dotted line outline out here is the border, and the yellow area is what was the key to kind of look at, knowing that there was a secondary plan that was going to be coming in for Southwood. So we honed in on here. So the next slides you see are going to kind of go deeper into there. First, taking a look at the zoning. So you heard zoning a few times, and maybe everybody's familiar with zoning, maybe nobody is. So I'm just going to quickly run over what we see in the area and then describe what that means. So the map that you see in front of you is a zoning map, and it shows, we'll start with all the properties to the east of University Crescent being zoned R1L, and in the yellow. What the R1 zones are residential single family zones, and the L just means the size of the lot. We have small, medium, and large. So the area is zoned for single family large lots, single family being probably not necessarily fully accurate, but kind of the highest and best use, so to speak, is a single family home on R1 zone lots. There's not all that much more that you can do that's strictly permitted without added applications. And one example might be a school. You might be able to do a school by what's called a conditional use on a R1 zone lot, but for the most part, a detached home is pretty much all you can build in an R1 zone. And the L, again, that's on the size of the lot. In this case, it's 5,500 square feet is the minimum lot area, whereas say if you're in R1S, it would be 2,500 square feet would be the minimum lot area. So again, 5,500 square feet for L. So that's all that the L next to it means, and the R1 kind of relates to the for lack of a better way of putting it, kind of the highest and best use that can go on the land in that instance. Then you're going to also see some orange in here, and RMF M and RMF L up in the corner. The RMF zoning, that stands for residential multifamily, so apartments and the like. And the M, just like L, stands for medium. It's the same kind of gradation that you'll find for the multifamily zones. In this case, for starting with RMFM, what that means is that the maximum height that you can build to is 60 feet, and the maximum units per lot area or dwelling units per lot area, which is basically a density calculation, is 1 unit for 800 square feet of lot area. So basically you take the lot area, you divide it by 800, and that's the maximum amount of units that you can get on that zoned land. RMFL, on the other hand, would be allow for taller buildings. It could go up to, I always kind of flip these around, but I think it's 150 feet in height, but a density of 1 unit for every 400 square feet of lot area. So again, you just take the lot area, divide by 400, that's how many units you could get on the land. So if it's 40,000, you get 100. And then among the last colors that you see here are the commercial zones. Same thing, there's a gradation to our commercial zones. C1 allows for less intense kind of commercial development, really your local, very localized retail, small shops, often with a square footage cap. I think if memory serves me, say for an office or something along those lines, it might only be 5,000 square feet. So it can be compatible in single family residential neighborhoods. And then you have that gradation where it goes up to C2, where you can have higher intensity commercial uses on the C2 lands, and then C3, even higher intensity commercial uses. So the maximum that we go up to in the City of Winnipeg zoning bylaw will be C4. And just to give you a sense of what kind of scale C4 would allow for, that's basically what all our major shopping centers are zoned, is C4. So Save-A-Tel Mall, Polo Park, et cetera, would all be C4 zoned. And then the last is just PR2, which is parks and recreation zoning. In this case, it'll accommodate obviously any parkland, but other sorts of uses. And in this case, we see in the middle here a school, and then the former golf course would have been zoned PR2. So that's just a general overview of some zoning and giving a little bit of an idea of how that works. So as we had mentioned, in looking at the request to do a plan in the area, what we want to do is also look at the policies that are forthcoming. And this is kind of why I just did a general overview on the Complete Communities Direction Strategy and the proposed policies that are in it. Now, what we did is we took a look at the area, bearing in mind the policies that are currently draft, to be perfectly clear, that have not been adopted by council as of yet, but that are kind of coming down the pipe, so to speak. And part of it is because what you would find in the current Complete Communities Direction Strategy is some good policies that would pertain to the lands that we would see here. And when I'm talking about the lands that in here, I'm kind of focusing more in this area, which would be an established neighborhood, kind of recent community area. And what you would find in Complete Communities today, if you took a look at it, is that there would be a host of policies that would basically say, accommodate a variety of different types of housing, try to promote the completeness of these communities by introducing more uses, but trying to do it in a compatible way. And again, I'm doing this in a very, very general kind of overview as to how that would be, but that's what it says. And these have been really good policies for us for a number of years. But as we're progressing to the update to the Complete Communities Direction Strategy, we thought we could get a little bit more kind of granularity on that. Sorry. And try to fine tune that a little bit about, what is compatible development and what would suit best. So what you'll find in the proposed policies is that you'll find basically a level of guidance that is following your street pattern and what your streets can kind of maintain. So over here, what you see on this map is all the local streets, because there's specific policies that will apply to local streets. Now, local streets are intended to take less traffic, and just as you see in here, will facilitate access to these neighborhood areas, but they're typically not going to have a bus route on them or anything along those lines, and they're often not going to have higher density uses with them. So the policy that guides the development for areas that in recent communities that where these policy areas are, is that single family residential uses will generally be directed to locate on local streets. So what that means is that we're probably not going to see all that much change in the areas that have the local streets over here. So we go to the next slide, again, as I said, that there's kind of a street hierarchy as to how policy guidance will work for future development. And it also talks about arterial roads, which in the neighborhood is University Crescent. So these are exact draft policies that are in the current recent communities, complete communities direction strategy 2.0. And they state residential uses of up to 6 stories will generally be accommodated on arterial roads where compatible with adjacent land uses and where they can be conveniently served with transit and local commercial amenities. And what's nice is that that word compatible could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. However, there's some extra guidance on what compatible development is, or what considerations should be taken into account. And these are existing zoning of the property and adjacent properties, the characteristics of the immediately surrounding built form, including building mass, height, lot coverage, setbacks, and layout. So building mass is just kind of the bulk of the building, kind of the, all those things together that would make the mass. Surrounding uses and their characteristics, including residential density, the characteristics of the lot, including whether or not it's a corner lot, a larger lot than is typical for the neighborhood, or the shape of the lot. And then proximity to what I referred to before as our transformative areas. So downtown, mixed-use centers, major redevelopment sites, and mixed-use corridors. Again, one of those, that term major redevelopment site was used. That in fact was the North Campus lands, or Southwood Golf Course was designated a major redevelopment site. And then the last one, I'm not going to read it all, but basically you could consider new locations for small scale commercial uses if it's on an arterial road. So yeah, so that's the proposed policy guidance for anything on, in this case, University Crescent, when we take a look at this a little bit closer. So if we broke this up and we looked at the kind of the west side of University first, from Thatcher northwards to the conjunction with Pembina, we'll see that most of this area is already mainly characterized with higher density residential buildings and a local commercial node kind of at the northern part here. And they already have zoning for multifamily to accommodate what I had described about up to 6 stories. That kind of can be accommodated already. And of course, it's built to even higher than that in some instances as well. And just so we're clear, nothing was done illegal in that situation. That zoning would have been in place and the development was built to the rates that it would have had at the time. We introduced a new zoning bylaw that's come in now, and it has a different effect, but that doesn't mean that this was developed in some kind of bad way or anything like that. And then there's properties on Thatcher Drive that are zoned and developed for detached single family homes on the corner over here. So if those were to develop in the future, they would require rezoning to a different category to go beyond having a single family dwelling on them. So what you can see over here is that there's already existing zoning rights. Most of the properties already kind of developed to their fullest extent, almost all of them. And then with the exception of the ones that are here, I don't know if there's anything that's transitional in nature. And now I'm circling the ones that are down here, but acknowledging that they're likely not transitional in nature whatsoever. I mean, we have properties that, for all intents and purposes, they seem to be in very nice shape and surviving very well as single family homes. And in fact, very recently developed single family homes. I think, in fact, the two on the bottom corner here might have been developed as recently as 2013. So with that being said, for a secondary plan or a plan development overlay where you're anticipating a fair amount of growth and change in the future, we're probably not going to see a lot over on the west side of the university. Now on the east side, when we take a look at it, it's characterized by detached single family homes that are zoned R1L, except for the one property at the northern extent here that of course is zoned RMFL, as I explained, residential multifamily large. Now, I just want to point out how unique this building is. For the most part, most of the lots that you'll see that front onto University Crescent are going to be in the neighborhood of about 120 feet deep and plus or minus about 60 feet wide. And so they'll generally have a lot area of about any range between 6 to 8,000 square feet, kind of in that 7,000 square foot range is what you're going to find. The lots that were consolidated into making this development turned out to make a site that's about 53,000 square feet in area with a minimum depth of about 200 square feet over here, or sorry, I said square feet, 200 feet over here, or about 335 feet up to here, and it's on the northern extent, and it's abutting, the Bishop Grandin Greenway or Bishop Grandin and University over on the western extent. This is extremely unique. If you were to try to make a lot that's 53,000 square feet, you would literally have to take nearly half of the lots on south of Wedgwood that front onto University Crescent to make that kind of happen. It's a very difficult thing to do, and depths of this sort are just not seen. There's a couple of lots immediately south of the one to the north here that are on the larger size, but again, for the most part, that depth is really hard to find, or it's impossible to find really along all of this frontage of University. So with these remaining lots that are zoned R1 and they're developed for single family homes, again, a rezoning would be required to get to allow for multifamily development or a duplex or something along those lines. There are also what we would call site depth constraints, and there's constraints that are brought forward by the front access in itself. And I'm just going to go over what I mean by that, just so you could kind of understand that. And because not everybody looks at development applications like we might on a daily basis. So what I mean by front access and some site depth issues is I'm going to compare a lot that has a back lane or that's supported by a back lane versus an example that's on University that's not. So this is just to orientate yourselves. I'm going to be looking at this item right here, or the middle image, which is A. And to the north, this is supposed to be a street that's in blank white, a sidewalk. And then we have a row house or townhouse development with units 1 to 6 in blue, a parking area, and a back lane. Now, some of the things about the efficiency of having a back lane for creating, a development beyond, say, a single family home, as an example, is that there's a couple things that happen. One, if you don't need front access, you don't have to break up the entire frontage of the street to allow for individual driveways or something along those lines. And it's one thing on a local street that's expected to have less traffic, but on a street like an arterial that's supposed to have, or that was anticipated to have and designed to have a lot of traffic, it becomes a lot more problematic having vehicles, of course, backing out into an area where there's a lot of traffic coming out. Secondly, it also interrupts the pattern of the sidewalk and the pedestrian use over here, especially in a higher use area where you would anticipate University Crescent being. The other thing I'd like to point out that's advantageous is the back lane in itself. The back lane creates an efficiency for developing your parking areas typically. So whereas I'll describe other developments, if you needed a front access, you would need to have a drive aisle accommodate the traffic. In a back lane situation, you could just kind of develop your parking directly off the back lane. So there are some efficiencies to developing in an area that has back lanes. Now, if you take this and kind of contrast it with what might have to happen on a lot that doesn't have a back lane. And now, just to be perfectly clear, I was very scientific and specific when I picked this lot. I closed my eyes and I zoomed in and I pointed, and whatever lot I hit was the one I hit that was on University Crescent. So if this happens to be your house, it's not intended in any way, and there's no development proposal here whatsoever. This is sheerly used for an example, and that is it. So here's the outside of this lot. And what I wanted to highlight here is some of the zoning regulations that would apply, which would be a front yard of 30 feet. And I've drawn it out roughly over here, and a backyard of 25, or a rear yard of 25 feet. So what's left in these two lines that are kind of going, northwest, southeast orientation, is what you could consider as your development pocket or your developable area. I've also shown what the length of this lot is. It's probably a little bit shorter than some of the other ones at 108 feet. But I drew this line in this specific area for a reason, is that that's approximately about 20 feet off of the property line. And to have a lane or a driveway entrance, it would take approximately 20 feet to accommodate that driveway. Now, I'd already talked about in the example for the townhouse or the lane example in the middle, that having that break in the street with individual driveways, although on a local street might be something that could work, on an arterial street, it's not as desirable. So I'm not anticipating this to be brought forward. If it is, I think there'd be a lot of discussion about that. But if you were to accommodate a laneway, this lot is about 60 feet in width. So you would be taking away at least 1/3 of that lot to accommodate a laneway in itself. Then you have to create an area to get a vehicle into the back area. Now, a typical parking stall length is about 20 feet, and same with its aisles are for two-way traffic is 20 feet. So this becomes a lot harder to develop, say for 3 units. Now, by comparison, you can draw a neat and tidy kind of 3-unit development right here, just right in the middle. And that's probably about the width that you would find overall, that you could accommodate something quite easily, and that's quite a bit less constrained. Just to give another example of that, if we look at this image down in D, which is down on St. Mary's Road, by comparison, it's got a lot width or each of these have a lot width of 55 feet and about a depth of about 120. So it's about 10 feet longer, but in terms of its width, it's about 5 feet shorter. These are 6-unit developments, and you can see that they're a little bit more efficient to accommodate, primarily again because of this laneway isn't needed. So that's when we're talking about the constraint of front access and the site depth. That's what we mean when we say something like that.
I got to jump in here, Robert. You're really smart. You're a great planner. But what are you saying really on University Crescent? It's difficult to almost impossible to develop multifamily dwellings on these single family residences?
It's difficult. It's constrained is ultimately the conclusion. Yeah, especially in a one-off. It's not impossible. It's not. But when you think about that, there's other areas in the city that you'd be able to do something like this a little bit more efficiently. It doesn't seem like it jumps off the map. Is I guess what I'm getting at, especially without consolidating multiple properties to try to make something kind of work overall. Yeah. So the one other exception might be though it might be a corner lot. So again, I just use this as an example, totally random and not being nobody's put a proposal forward or anything along those lines, but it's just to highlight an example and to kind of illustrate a point, is that because Wedgwood is a local street and will have less traffic on it, and you don't have to rely on a front access. If you take that same kind of front yard and the same rear yard over here, and you're left with roughly this development pocket in here, you might be able to develop kind of like what you see over here is just a direct parking area over to the side or to the back part of the house. And it might be a little bit more efficient to do, say, something like, and I'm using in this example, something really small, like 3 units or maybe even as high as 4. But then because of that efficiency is kind of in, and that you don't have to like develop that lane and take out a lot of other land. And this isn't to say that somebody might not want to, consolidate these lands, meaning add, this to it and make the redevelopment site. Sure, that could happen. But what I just wanted to illustrate that it is on a corner, slightly easier to do something like that. but overall, there is a fair amount of kind of constraint when you're trying to develop something with only a front axis, especially when it's coming off of a major arterial street. So with this, I'll jump to the summary and conclusions. Again, just to highlight what we were asked to do and what we went through. We were asked by the motion to investigate the potential for a secondary plan or a plan development overlay in Agassiz and Montcalm. With that, we reviewed the planning framework that we have here that applies to us in Winnipeg, and we reviewed what secondary plans and PDOs are. We then talked about how proposed Complete Communities Direction Strategy 2.0 can influence development in the focus area. We provide some commentary on development opportunities and constraints in the focus area, and provided a little bit of commentary on the need or PDO is what we're left to do. In some of the, in order to kind of provide that commentary, we talked about some of the development opportunities in the focus area, and we really highlight that they're generally quite limited overall. So we wouldn't expect to see too much change in the area overall. And it's primarily limited by the site characteristics that the last slide was really trying to get into. The other thing that we note is that the draft Complete Communities policy should sufficiently guide development in the focus area. They seem to put that kind of granularity and a little bit more specificity in terms of what we're looking for to kind of make for compatible development in the area. On top of that, we know that rezonings are going to be required, so there's a process involved with that, and that lot consolidations, if there is going to be some change, they're going to be quite likely. So with that, we would conclude that a secondary plan or a PDO wouldn't be warranted, just because there's not a lot of properties here that we'd be looking at, and also that we would there's the site characteristic kind of constraints that we know. And with that, I'd open the floor to questions and see what we've kind of had come up so far.
Robert, could I just sort of summarize something too? Can we go back to the slide where you've got University Crescent and you've got both sides of University Crescent?
In here?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so great planner, really knowledgeable, maybe a bit too technical for me or maybe others, but from the understanding that I get and from discussions prior, and I think this is what is the concern of the residents, we'll see what feedback comes through, but from my understanding, what you're saying is on the east side of University Crescent, it's very, very difficult to do any kind of multifamily development because of the small lot sizes. And even if they were to, someone were to buy up 2 or 3 lots, it's really difficult because the lots are very, I'm going to call it shallow or not deep, very not deep, because there's frontage roads, because there's no back lanes. And, maybe on the corners, like Wedgwood, maybe that would happen. I see on Thatcher, on the north side of Thatcher on the corner, our nefarious illegal rooming house seems to be being renovated into some beautiful new thing now. So from what I'm hearing, what I heard when we met prior and what I'm hearing tonight, and I think what residents want to hear is there's really not a lot of action on the east side of University Crescent that can occur in the way of any kind of multifamily development. And that in the neighborhood itself, nothing, there'll be none because it's all zoned R1L.
Yeah, I think you summarized it quite nicely there. I think overall, that's a really good kind of simplified view of how that would be. And I think that, yeah, as we pointed out, I just don't see that the opportunities are really kind of ripe for the picking, so to speak, I guess, is what I was trying to highlight, is that there's pretty significant challenges to making significant developments over here. Yeah, with the exception of some of those corner properties, we could probably expect something in those areas. Yeah, and we could have an application. It's not, again, this isn't to say that it's impossible for somebody to do something like this, but what's the likelihood? And really, we're also looking at a total of about 20 properties that are on the east side of University Crescent that kind of touch University Crescent itself. So yeah, you're right. The challenges I highlight make it seem, quite a bit less likely that we're going to see applications of a pretty significant nature and the sort. Again, not impossible, but pretty unlikely.
Okay, so who's going to answer the question? There's some questions that are coming in. What about commercial development? Robert, you want to talk about that?
Where are you seeing these?
I'm seeing these in the, I don't know, in the chat. I'm seeing these in the
Okay,
chat.
okay. You know what? Sorry, I'm not looking at the chat. I got question and answer open. If that's okay. And I saw the chat kind of ringing, and I was trying not to get distracted because otherwise I would never get through here. So I'm sorry about that for anybody who was kind of dinging up the chat area. If we're going to go through these here, I'd like to focus on the question and answer, and I'm going to start at the top for what I see here. There are the lots on the Red River really zoned R1L? Yeah, they are, but it doesn't mean that it's a. These might be under city jurisdiction. So I don't have the map in front of me. I don't have everything.
I just looked them up. Actually, that was a good question. I looked them up on iView, and the majority of the lots on the Red River side are owned by the city, but there are some that are privately owned. So to answer that question.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilor Lukes. Okay, so we could jump to the next one. Thank you for the for the comment. So thank you for the thoroughness. This is Danica. I'm wondering if the old golf course is going to be rezoned into RMF. There might be multiple categories. There will be some RMF in there inherently. Absolutely, there will be RMF that is expected on the golf course. Their secondary plan basically enables it, particularly in the southern extent and the area that kind of more to the south, but that fronts onto Pembina as well, that they would have higher density multifamily there. Absolutely, yes. We would anticipate this for sure.
Okay, good question from Les Weens. Hi, Les Weens. That's a good question from Les.
Okay, what would prevent? So I'll do my best to answer these live if that's helpful for people. Let's see. So what would prevent someone from a land assembly of the lots on the east side of University Crescent combined with lots on the west side of Agassiz Drive and creating a larger depth for major, oh, that's a very good question, for major RMF development? That would create a challenging application. And you know what, you raise a very good point. I didn't discuss this almost for a reason. I think from a planning standpoint, we would be strongly opposed to this for a number of reasons. It ultimately breaks any character of that street. So I deliberately didn't actually speak about that, partly because not to kind of confuse the issue. So I really appreciate this question. It's an excellent question. But yeah, given what kind of a break that could create to the neighboring properties and how that could be, for lack of a better term or word, disrupt the character of that street, we would likely strongly discourage it. Can somebody try to do that? They could try. They could try an application, purchase a number of lands, and go ahead and do that. Could they maybe consider that in a corner situation? Yes, they could probably do that as well. And maybe that wouldn't be as disruptive if somebody brought something like that forward. But there's no set prevention per se for somebody buying two of the lands, but they would have to come forward with an application, and that application would be before a public hearing body for review. But good question, really good.
And I wouldn't support it. I mean, it comes forward to a public hearing where a counselor and a committee look at it, but I mean, I wouldn't support it. It makes no sense. It's in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So, and the department wouldn't support it. So how about if I take the one about the $9.9 million upgrade to the road? Okay.
That'd
I'm
be great.
I got the budget book out and I'm looking it up for Mary Ann. So the federal government has provided the city of Winnipeg over I think it's a 4-year period of funding for road infrastructure improvements, and also the province of Manitoba. So this funding has already been provided. It was provided, I believe it was 2 years ago. We're into year 3. So this $9.9 million is heavily supported, and I'm looking for the breakdown, but heavily supported by the province and the federal government for road infrastructure review. So that's the answer.
So the next one may be the same. What are the plans for University Crescent itself? I'm assuming it's pertaining to the upgrade.
The plans for University Crescent. So what are the plans for University Crescent itself? So I guess if we're talking about the street, the road's going to be upgraded. I don't have details on that, but I will send it out to everyone who's provided me the email when the city provides the details. But basically, they're going to rip out the roads, fix the roads, fix the sidewalks, fix pathways. So if you're speaking Jan Gourlay to specifically University Crescent itself, from Pembina Highway all the way to Chancellor Matheson.
Okay.
You know what? Even this next one from C Prop, will there be any commercial zoning in the old golf course? Absolutely. And I can send you the plan. I don't, this has been public for Mr. Platt, I think now for over a month and a half, I guess. But there will be commercial zoning in the old golf course. They're going to be putting in grocery store. The plans are to put in by Sifton Road. That's where they're starting. They've got big plans for commercial and multifamily residential. It's not solely student housing. It's people that want to move out of their house and want to move into condos or apartments. It's going to be that. I believe they will be coming forward in March or April with much more detailed plans, which again, I can fire you off an email when those plans come forward. But they're focusing virtually all of their development around Sifton Road in this first phase.
Councillor, if I may, Rob, can you please put on the Southwood plan? I believe you had it on a slide previously.
Yeah.
At the start of the presentation.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not following that chat. So I'm trying to just focus on what's in front of me here. Yeah.
You have a slide with the Southwood lands, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that will give us a good indication of where the commercial would be permissible. So you can see the North Campus lands map here. I'm just going to make my screen bigger so I can see it a bit better. The area that's in yellow there is the neighborhood area. That will not be commercial. The area that's in purple could have commercial mixed use in it.
Just tell us that backs onto Thatcher. What's the area in yellow? You've got neighborhood. What does that mean? Like
that is just housing. It's residential.
Residential.
And it could turn out to be park space too. Don't forget the city can take 10% land dedication, which as the U of M comes forward with a proposal, we may be asking for more park space in there. We'll see how it goes.
And this is a 45-year plan that the University Southwood Golf Course lands are looking at, is what the developer has been speaking about.
Yes, and that's a really good point, because we tend to look at the plan and think, wow, I can't wait till this occurs. But quite frankly, I don't know that I'll be around when this gets completed. And the stuff that's in the north there next to Thatcher Drive isn't phase 1. That's a long way down the road. Phase 1 would be, as you had pointed out, Sifton Road in that area where Rob's moving the cursor. And that might take 5 to 10 years even. We don't know.
So that's
It's ambitious,
the first phase,
but don't
right?
forget,
In-
that's
in the-
correct.
the
So
blue
even though
check-
it's, yeah, I think the blue pattern has more to do with the light blue pattern that you see there has more to do with a style of development that they would like. There's special rules that apply in there. But phase 1 would be south of Markham Road, east of University Crescent, right where the cursor is right now.
Just to highlight it a little bit easier.
Yeah, there we go. That's easier to see. There may also be commercial, as you might expect, along Pembina Highway in the purple area there too. That is a major corridor. And don't forget, this is on a bus rapid transit route too. So the types of uses that go in there are actually pretty exciting over the long term. But the idea is there wouldn't be commercial very close to Thatcher Drive.
Okay.
So that was there. Will there be any commercial zoning in the old golf course? So, I'm expecting the Southwood Golf Course development community to come forward with a plan in the next, I don't know, month or two, and I will send it to the residents so they can see it. They have the opportunity to comment on it if they want. And now we go to Les Weens. Will we be discussing the road upgrade? Okay, so Les, I gave you a high level on it, and I see further down you've got, how do we provide input to the upgrades? Are they moving the pedestrian crosswalk to a more appropriate placing? I'm going to send you this information that Public Works gave me, and you'll be able to provide input. They're putting together a list of stakeholders, and if you want to have that opportunity to provide input, just email me, please. They won't be increasing the speed limit. I don't think they're widening University Crescent. They're just, it's horrible, right? It's in horrible conditions. It's more of a condition upgrade.
Okay, so we've covered a bunch of those. I guess we are discussing the road upgrade. Great. I'm looking at Les's question at the top here.
Yeah.
So we'll say that was discussed. Why would funding for roads be supported without any changes in the buildings and lots?
Okay, I'm not sure on that, but like roads fall apart and they have to fix them, right? They're not going to worry about the buildings and the lots around it. The access road into a home, like all those houses on University Crescent, part of their road, their driveway will be upgraded when University Crescent's upgraded. Part of it will, the city part of it will. But if you're interested in learning more about University Crescent, send me an email when I send you the update on University Crescent. And intersections and installation of lights, all that detail, $9.9 million is going to spiff it up. So there's going to be upgrades to intersections and installation of lights.
Okay, I think we talked about, there was a widen question. I think you talked about that. Somebody's asking widen, a widening of university is, I guess, what they're asking is university being widened?
Okay, it seems like the A picture showing what lots could be used for that. Oh, I lost just wait. That it seems like the A picture showing what lots could be used for that showed a back lane was used to suggest the possibility of going deeper into Agassiz, replacing the lane. No. You may want to unmute Ron to clarify what the question is, but I'm not sure what the question is.
Yeah, I'm going to pop out of what I have here for a moment. Okay, so let's just go back to the slide that Ron, I think, is talking about. It seemed like the A picture showing what lots could be used for that showed a back lane was used to suggest the possibility of going deeper with Agassiz replacing the lane. Nope. The A picture has nothing to do with any suggestion of development in the area. All it is to show the difference between when there's a lane there and when there's not a lane. We're not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that lanes are going to be added, or suggesting that this is going to be a development pattern brought forward. It's only to show there's a constraint involved with front access. And I wanted to highlight that constraint by showing what it's like to develop on a lane part, and that's it. That was the only purpose of showing that image in A and the image in D, was just to hopefully show what the difference is, and how when I say that there's a constraint with the front access approach, I just wanted to demonstrate what I mean, and that was simply it.
Just an example. Okay.
Fully an example.
Okay. Hearing the answer challenging for people that were at meetings when 30 University Crescent was discussed is not reassuring. I'm not quite clear on that one, Ron. You might want to send me another question. Okay, Murray's got, assuming the development of the golf course area proceeds, will there be an upgrade to sewer to accommodate the greater densification during this work? Absolutely. And I didn't bring this up. I don't know if you'll find this riveting or not, but in the next 5 years, okay, I'll go back a step. So the Darcy Street pumping station at the end of Darcy is the pumping station for the entire southwest quadrant of Winnipeg. All the sewer and everything goes to the Darcy Street pumping station and is pumped in that pipe. You see it that goes under the bridge or underneath the Bishop Grandin, and then it goes to the South Winnipeg sewer treatment plant. A $50 to $60 million upgrade to the sewer system is going to be happening under the river along the East Riverbank to the South Winnipeg sewer treatment plant over the next 5 years. That's a good thing. And yeah, for sure the golf course will have to upgrade to accommodate sewer. There's lots of road questions. So Jenny, as someone who lives on University Crescent, will there be options for evening or weekend street parking with the upgrades on University Crescent? I don't know. I haven't seen any of the diagrams yet. I highly doubt it, because University Crescent is a massive, I believe it's a regional street with much transit and lots of traffic. So I highly doubt they're going to be putting parking back on there, but you know, it's a good question that we can look up. I'm taking the road ones because I've been passionate about the road ones. So
I'm happy that you are.
Okay, so you know where the bike lanes, okay, this is a really good one, Mitri. This is a really good one. Do you know where the bike lanes will be? So I am really pushing for this. And I am bringing on many people to talk about this during this road consultation. I would like to see on both sides a separated sidewalk and the pathway, like we see at the stadium when it comes out of the stadium on the west side. There's a separate lane for bikes, a separate lane for pedestrians. In speaking with the developer from the University of Manitoba, they absolutely want to see that same thing too. The University of Manitoba's active transportation, all their studies and policies and everything they've been working on says state-of-the-art active transportation. So the Public Works Department's choking over it a little bit because of the cost, but you know what? It's my mission to work through this so we get state-of-the-art, both sides, pedestrian and bike lanes. Marianne, will there be ability to have parking on the street? I really doubt it. Are there plans to slow the traffic on University Crescent? I'm not sure on that. This will be part of the study. I don't know, you know, one would hope, right? But I don't know. Continued parking question, referring to University Crescent, maybe for weekends. Continued parking question. Yeah, I don't know, Marianne. I really don't think they're going to put parking on University Crescent. Now, I do believe traffic will be decreasing because hopefully people will be using more transit with the Southwest Rapid Transit Corridor. But as we all know, COVID has thrown a crazy wrench into transit, people going or not going to university. It's a little crazy right now. I don't know how long it's going to take people to feel comfortable to take transit again. That's a problem. Okay, Kathy Hughes, along University Crescent, is it possible that there could be commercial development? Not likely to be RMF, but wondering if lots could be bought up for commercial. I'll let you handle that one, Mr.
Yep.
Kostyuk.
Yeah, no problem. So there was that policy that I skimmed over, and it wasn't that likely. I'll bring it back up on the screen for you. Let's go. So it's the one at the bottom here. Consider new locations. Sorry, I got to move my chat. Okay. Consider new locations for small scale commercial uses that have a neighborhood focus if they are located on an arterial road, so university, abutting existing commercial uses at the periphery of the neighborhood or immediately adjacent uses to uses rendering the subject property unsuitable for residential development. So on the east side, that seems pretty unlikely. In fact, almost very unlikely is probably better stated. But on the west side, as we already see some commercial development, it would be more likely on the west side if the opportunity arose or something along those lines. So, but east side, no. Is there any possibility for new sidewalks or bike lanes for University Crescent? Sorry, Councillor, I'm gonna.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, Linda B says, I believe front yards will be lost to bike lanes, correct? No, the city is not going to take any private property at all for any bike lanes or any sidewalks. So the city will not be taking private property. They'll only be using the city right away. And you know those sidewalks, they're really skinny, right? They may make the sidewalk. I don't really know what they're doing exactly in the section of University Crescent on the east side yet, but they won't be taking anyone's front yards at all. Good question. C prop. Will the primary line of defense be realigned to protect the Southwood development? Mr. Platt, I see you smiling there. Yes, absolutely. This was a massive discussion in the secondary plan approvals. The primary line of defense, the university will be realigning the primary line of defense and building a dike of some kind. So for sure. And again, you know what, in this probably, oh, look, Mr. Platt's pulling it up there. You want to speak to that, Mr. Platt?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, so the primary line of defense right now is University Crescent, as many of you probably may or may not know. As development occurs in phases, like with phase 1, the primary line of defense would then be shifted over to the river and then would go down Markham Road. That would include the building of a dike. And as development proceeds into future phases, which would be north of the phase 1, I believe it's maybe even phase 3 or 4 where it starts to get up closer to Thatcher. The dike would then be constructed along there, and the primary line of defense would be moved accordingly, along the river. The goal is to protect the entire area with a primary line of defense. There's no intention of the city to allow for development outside of the primary line of defense.
And I just want to add to that, when the developer comes forward to get plan approval, I will send residents a notification and they can listen live. And I'm going to have the developer talk about the green space. They've had a special study done of the corridor along the river, the green space. And they will be developing it into, or developing, they will be restoring it back into a wildlife corridor. So it's actually really amazing what they're going to be doing. Now, do you think, Mr. Kostyuk, you could unmute Ron? Ron's got some, yeah, if people want to talk live, we've got.
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. Let's see. So let me.
Ron Roger, Rogue.
Participants.
And just so you know, if people don't follow zoning rules, Ron, they can't build. If they build with not following, it gets ripped down. So they can't do that.
I might have to get out of screen sharing here. Just give me a moment.
Okay.
Oh, hang on. I see my list. Ron. We have some extreme powers over here, Ron. I'm sorry. We'll allow you to talk. Allowing you to speak. So you can unmute, Ron, and you could ask follow up on your question.
I think I just unmuted.
You are clear. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you very much for that. Sorry about that. It just seems fairly involved to ask some of the questions. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't really get the point of that A picture there before, because if there's an example that doesn't sort of apply in an area, it doesn't seem to be helpful. That's just one comment generally. I feel a little bit burned, to be honest with you, because I was part of the meetings for the 30 University Crescent, and it just seemed like there wasn't a chance to really speak to this and to speak to that and actually have to make any kind of an impact. And so so honestly, that's part of how I'm coming to this meeting. And so I'm maybe sounding more negative than some of the other questions that I'm hearing. So, but there are some buildings that have been identified, and Councillor Lukes just mentioned that there were some places that seemed to be some kind of illegal zoning houses, even some places that have just recently been put up. But I can't, you know, I mean, I don't know about that specifically either. Then that's why my question is, okay, so generally what happens when people don't follow zoning rules? How are zoning rules followed up then? Do people try to discover what is really happening in those buildings? Because there's at least another building that is within that residential area that you've shown that is not on University Crescent, but that doesn't seem to be following the zoning rules. And,
okay, so Ron, you're speaking about like an area, like a house that is zoned single family residential, but there's activities that may indicate there's more than one or two families living in the house, and therefore you feel they're not respecting the zoning. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. And so I don't know what the appropriateness of talking about it at this place is, other than sort of in general senses.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not being any more specific.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay, so to answer that question, and I will refer actually to that house on the corner of Thatcher and University Crescent that was a frat house that, you know, at one time had 10 rooms in it that's now being redeveloped. So that house took out, you know, had to take out permits for a single family home, and is being developed as a single family home. So if you feel that there are multiple families living in a house anywhere in University or in Agassiz and University Heights, you need to email 311, and this is what I recommend to everyone. Put in that email what makes you think that is a multi-family house. And what will happen is a bylaw inspector will come out and investigate that complaint. So maybe you see 8 cars there. Maybe you see 10 people coming and going at all times, you know, like things that make you feel that they're not a family, or not, you know, that it may be a rental house. Because face it, we've got that problem of illegal rental houses. And then a bylaw officer will come out and inspect it.
Okay, can I ask a follow-up question there yet as well?
Yep.
So with so what is it then in terms of zoning, whatever, if I wanted to open up a Airbnb? I don't, but if I did, theoretically, is that allowed?
Airbnbs are a new beast that are becoming a little more popular here in Winnipeg. And currently, right now, there is no ruling against Airbnb, but I say that knowing a motion is going to be coming forward and having the public service look into it. The hoteliers, the Hotel Association are not happy with Airbnbs. I have come across two that I'm aware of in the Fort Richmond area. And the neighbors don't like it because people are coming and going. They don't know who's there. They come and go. The hoteliers don't like it because there's no tax that people are collecting. Neighbors don't like it because it's very transient. There's a lot of challenges with Airbnb, and the city, Winnipeg, has not seen the proliferation of Airbnb like, say, Vancouver, Toronto, places like that, but they are starting to pop up. So if you think there's an Airbnb, send me an email and we'll work on that together.
Okay, and one more follow-up then.
Yeah.
Because there's a step up from Airbnb then, which theoretically one family comes and, spend some time somewhere, whatever. And that would be that there's something like a mini hotel that happens then with people staying for a week or 2 weeks and then moving on. So that would be, it seems to be even a step up from that. And I'm just wondering, this would be an ideal place for something like that to happen close to the university. But I would think, but yeah. So same situation then as with Airbnb?
Yeah, I mean, it may be an ideal place, but it's not allowed. These are single family homes, zoned single family. And if you feel there's an issue, then we need to address it and we need to get the bylaw officers out there. And the only way the bylaw officers can come is if they get a complaint.
So I have to formalize that complaint then with, it's not anonymous. You would have to say.
You know what? If you want it anonymous, you can send all your details to me and I'll send it into the bylaw officer.
Okay. No,
It is anonymous, but some people are worried about it, but you can send it to me and I'll forward it into the bylaw officer.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ron. I'm going to just put you on mute again as a public servant with perhaps too much control right now here. I also see that Les has got a few questions and he's got his hand up. I'm just going to open your mic there, Les, if you would like to talk, unless you've had your questions answered. If not, we could just simply go to the list that we have before us.
Now give Les the mic. Let him talk. He's always got something interesting to say.
All right, let's see. I lost him in my list here. Okay, Les, I opened your mic, I believe. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm unmuted now, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of pet peeves with the redevelopment of University Crescent. One is the location of the crosswalk, going back to when the golf course needed it to get golfers across University Crescent. It's currently located far away from where most pedestrians cross University Crescent, which is right at Thatcher Drive. It would make sense during the redevelopment to relocate the crosswalk to a more functional space.
Yes, you know what, Les? I was thinking of the crosswalk further north, but I know for a fact that one's going to be relocated. So.
And my second pet peeve is in regards to the Diamond Lane as you approach Pembina from University Crescent northbound. There's a Diamond Lane, which made sense when there are so many hundreds of buses going down there. But now at the bus corridor, it's very rarely used by buses. And the bridge was designed for that to be the curb lane going on to the Bishop Grandin overpass on Pembina Highway, and allow people to then make one lane change to end up eventually being westbound on Bishop Grandin. As it's signed right now, you're in the center lane on University Crescent and having to change lanes twice with traffic in that right-hand lane. It's not the way the bridge is designed, it's unsafe. And one thing that could be done that's extremely inexpensive and extremely helpful is if lines could be painted showing that the median lane should end up on Pembina in the median lane, the center lane should end up in the center lane. There's a lot of people driving through that intersection not aware of how to keep the proper lane as they enter Pembina northbound.
Yes, and you know what, Les? I know that they're going to really focus on cleaning that up, and you bring up a really good valid point about the Diamond Lane. So, you know, I will either get you into one of these stakeholder meetings or we'll write it up, but I hear you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I appreciate it. And I typed in a comment, but I just want to also verbalize it. This has been a really fabulous presentation. Mr. Kostiak, I really appreciate your efforts, and Janice, of course, you know that I love everything you do. So thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. It's great that with all the participation we had, and we're really happy to do things like this. This is great.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I'm looking, and I'm just going to go look in the chat. Academy Road has parking and it is heavy with traffic and transit. True it is. True it is. I hazard to say that there's more traffic and more buses on University Crescent. I could confirm that, but I'm almost 99% sure. Yeah, I really don't think they're going to be putting parking on University Crescent at all. Any other questions?
Don't know if there's any other questions. If anybody else, if they have, kind of going once, going twice here, or if they want to raise their hands, I think I see, I don't know if I'm missing anything. Looks like there's one hand up, but I can't find where that hand is. Oh, it was dropped. So,
now, Robert, this is being recorded for people. I know there were some people that couldn't come. It's being recorded. And where will it be? Will it be on my website, or where will I put it, or where will you?
Yeah. So what happened is, with a few of these tests that we did, I should get an email giving a link. And yeah, would you like me to just send it to you and send it out to the list that you had?
Yep,
that might be simple enough.
Yeah, that would be great. I'll send it to the people that participated, and then I've got some that weren't able to participate, and send them the link and they can watch the video. And as always, if anyone has, I mean, I hate these Zooms because I can't see people and we can't talk, but you know what? They're better than nothing, I guess. But if anyone has any questions about anything at all, please send it to me and I'll get back to you. And I'll also keep you updated on the plan approval for the University of Manitoba Golf Course site and for the University Crescent development that's coming down the tube. And in 2 years or so, the sewer interceptor at the Darcy Street pumping station, which is a really great thing.
Excellent.
I want to thank the public service for really doing all this work and being involved and helping out. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. This is, we like this stuff, and it's always nice to connect with the community. And this is a little bit, we haven't done many of these Zoom ones, so this was a lot of fun. I got to feel like almost like a radio host.
Okay, it's time. The show is over. Okay.
All right, the show's ending. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks so much for your participation, and Councilor Lux.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks, Valdine. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.